day the president's head was practically blown off.
Now, we tell the story of that terrible event, minute by minute, from the unique perspective of three of those at the center of it all. Roy Kellerman, the Secret Service agent in charge.
This is a massive failing by the intelligence services.
In San Antonio, greeting the huge crowds mean Jackie and her husband are already behind schedule. As they begin their journey to Brooks Air Force Base, they travel in open-top cars so they can be seen by as many people as possible. Keeping a close watch over them is their 9-man Secret Service detail.
The Secret Service main objective is definitely to protect the president. They're not there to investigate, they're not there to necessarily go after an assassin or assassins or to foil a plot. Their whole raison d'etre is to cover and evacuate the president.
Head of security for the trip is veteran agent Roy Kellerman. This is his first time in charge.
He came from Detroit, Michigan, and he rose quickly through the ranks. He had a funny nickname, they called him Gabby. The reason why I called him Gabby was the exact opposite. He was very soft-spoken and didn't speak much.
Kellerman and his team will need to be at the top of their game. Texas is a hotbed of right-wing racism. Jackie Kennedy and her husband are beginning their 3-day tour of Texas. Well known for being a hotspot of right-wing racism, it's considered a very dangerous place for the Kennedys to visit. In June, Kennedy had delivered a speech supporting the civil rights movement.
The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city.
His words divide America.
North and South.
By giving his famous June '63 speech, he really fanned the flames in the right wing, the kind of people that President Kennedy himself said, well, we're heading to nut country now.
At 2:40 p.m., Jackie and the president arrive at Brooks Air Force Base for a major speech.
We do stand on the edge of a great new era.
Jackie watches her husband wow the 9,000-strong crowd.
In every phase of human endeavor, it is a time for pathfinders and pioneers.
It's the first time Jackie has been seen in public for 4 months. In August, while heavily pregnant, she had been rushed to hospital.
Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy bears a premature son who has been baptized Patrick Bouvier.
Born 5 weeks premature, baby Patrick lived for just 39 hours. Jackie's presence means bigger crowds, something that delights her husband, but worries Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman.
Kennedy walked among the crowd, shaking hands, generally creating a nightmare for the Secret Service men who found themselves concerned about their inability to protect him.
Kellerman and his agents are doing their best to create an envelope of security around Jackie and the president. Working as a team, they know exactly what to look for.
You're looking for something out of place. You're looking for an angry face, somebody with their hands in their pockets. They'll tell them in a nice way, please remove your hands from your pockets. This is the stressful part of their job. This is what they signed up for. They knew that when they made the White House detail, they were the elite of the elite.
Kellerman and his team are about to be tested like never before. It's the end of a long first day for Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman. With his charges secure in Suite 850 of the Hotel Texas, he clocks off. But as Kellerman heads to bed, many of his agents head to the bar.
9 agents drank the night before the assassination. That's grounds for removal from the agency.
November 22nd, 1963. Secret Service agent Roy Kellerman is anxious to know if they will need a bubble top for the Dallas motorcade. Although not bulletproof, the clear plexiglass creates a physical barrier between the president and the people. Today, the debate still rages about Kennedy's attitude towards the bubble top.
If they only would have left the front and rear pieces on and even had that open piece in the middle, that would have been a security function. It's a psychological deterrent because so many people wrongly assumed it was bulletproof when an assassin or assassins even try with it on.
It's taken just 13 minutes in Air Force One to fly from Fort Worth to Dallas.
Friday morning, the president's jet lands at the Dallas airport, Love Field.
Once again, it's Jackie who walks off the plane first to an enthusiastic reception.
The usual welcoming committee presents Mrs. Kennedy with a bouquet of red roses.
If you listen to the narration that morning on WFAA ABC, they say, wow, the president, this is amazing. Instead of getting into the president's limousine, he's heading towards the crowd.
Secret Service boss Roy Kellerman may be getting used to this scene, but he's not letting his guard down.
You can see Roy Kellerman, everybody. He's looking to see that the various local police and local agents are in place. He's looking to see that rope line is there. He's looking to see everything appears to be normal.
Six. $11:50 a.m. at Love Field Airport, Dallas. Jackie sits next to her husband in the back of the open-top limousine. Up front, Secret Service boss Roy Kellerman gives the code word for the presidential couple, Lancer and Lace departing.
Friday, 10 minutes before noon. The motorcade begins the 11-mile ride to the Dallas Trade Mart, where the president is to deliver a major address.
The motorcade stretches for half a mile.
You had the presidential limousine. You had the Secret Service fob car. You had the mayor's car. Then you had the vice president car, and you had the Secret Service fob car for him, other various dignitary cars, local congressmen and senators, you had the press and so on.
Humiliated by the October attack on UN Ambassador Adlai Stevenson, the City of Dallas police have deployed over 700 men, but unusually, none are guarding Dallas's many high-rise rooftops.
The major trip before in Florida, in Tampa, 28 miles, almost 3 times the length of Dallas. They had multi-story building rooftops guarded with all the sheriff's department with heavy arms. In fact, I spoke to the lead motorcycle officer in Tampa. He told me, oh, every multi-story building at 28 miles had armed men, and they would have shot anybody untoward during that motorcade.
Got a pretty good crowd of people down here on Turtle Creek. It's down to 2 lanes of traffic.
He spotted a sign asking the president to stop and shake hands. In a moment, the president's car is surrounded by screaming children.
You can see from the photos, they got all around the limousine there as it stood still. The agents, to their credit, would have formed around the car and been looking at those hands as if they were at the airport again and looking for any untoward motions, taking people to get their hands out of their pockets.
Simmons Freeway on both sides is pretty well crowded from Continental. Have to go at real slow speed now.
Nearly 5,000 miles away, in the offices of a small local newspaper in Cambridge, England, an anonymous caller tells a reporter to call the US Embassy for some big news. 12:21 p.m.
1223.
Halfway down Main Street, FBI Special Agent James Hosty watches the motorcade pass by. He's shocked at how exposed the President and First Lady are. All the Secret Service agents are in the car behind.
When you realize the building rooftops weren't guarded, there's people hanging all out of windows, you realize they weren't on the back of the car in a concentrated fashion. And there wasn't more motorcycles bracketing the car, and even the use of the bubble top. It makes you realize how much Kennedy was a sitting duck.
10-4-1. Is there a pretty good crowd there? Big crowd, yes.
As the motorcade progresses through downtown Dallas, Jackie is feeling the heat. Exposed in the open-top car, she's not as comfortable as her husband with frenzied crowds.
The motorcade turns off Main Street and enters Dealey Plaza. And they make a short right-hand turn onto Houston Street.
In the presidential car, Jackie hears Governor Connolly's wife say to the president, "You certainly can't say that the people of Dallas haven't given you a nice welcome."
And the president says, "No, you sure can't." Then they make the really tight jog onto Elm Street. Now, this was all a violation of Secret Service protocol and common sense. You're never supposed to take the president in a situation where you're slowing the car down like that.
The president's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the Trade Mart. I was on Simmons Freeway earlier, and even the freeway was jam-packed with spectators waiting their chance to see the president.
The first shot rings out. The vast majority of Dealey Plaza witnesses thought it was a firecracker or even a motorcycle backfire.
The moment of the first shot is one of chaos and confusion.
Secret Service agent Kellerman jolts his head to the right, where he thinks the shot has come from.
Stand by, please. Something has happened in the motorcade route. Several police officers are rushing up the hill. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
Secret Service agent Kellerman screams into his radio.
Lawson, this is Kellerman, we've been hit. Wynn Lawson was the agent in the lead car in front of them. We've been hit. Get us to the hospital immediately.
Stand by. 10-4 Parkland has been notified, 1232.
Jackie Kennedy tries to get out of the limousine, her pink suit covered in her husband's blood.
It is difficult to watch the First Lady's response of her trying to clamber over the back of the limousine.
She's in shock, she's disorientated.
There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle, over the top of the car.
As an eyewitness, even many decades later, it's still a moment that's actually really difficult to take in.
As her husband's lifeless body slumps into her lap, Jackie screams, "My God, they have shot his head off." She will tell the investigation later, "I could see a piece of his skull, and I remember it was flesh-colored. I remember thinking he just looked as if he had a slight headache. Then I just remember falling on him and saying, 'Oh no, no, no.'"
This is a massive failing by the intelligence services. They have been seen to fail by the entire world.
The blood, the screams, the fear, the murder of a US president.
President Kennedy has been killed in broad daylight in front of hundreds of witnesses. Yet today, exactly what happened is still furiously debated.
There are many conspiracy theorists who are convinced that there were multiple shooters in Dealey Plaza. And perhaps most famously, the conspiracy theorist Oliver Stone put out a film that suggested there were many, many shooters.
Key to it all is exactly how many shots were fired at the president. Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman believes he hears a flurry of shells coming into the car. Later, the official version will say 3. The magic bullet theory is the most controversial element of the official investigation. It relies on Oswald's second shot, inflicting multiple wounds on both Kennedy and Governor Connolly. Dr. Cyril Wecht is a longtime critic.
No matter who the shooter might be, if you don't have a single bullet theory, you cannot have a sole assassin. It is that basic, it is that absolutely unequivocal.
We can dispute whether this was an act of one individual or an elaborate conspiracy.
I repeat, Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound.
5 minutes after the shooting, Jackie cradles her dying husband.
Attention all emergency equipment, attention all emergency equipment. Keep all traffic off of the emergency entrance to Parkland Hospital.
As the presidential limousine races at 80 miles per hour, she whispers, "He's dead. They've killed him." As the motorcade screeches to a halt, Agent Kellerman helps lift the president out of the car.
He said JFK's eyes were open and it looked like all signs of life were gone, although technically he did have a heartbeat and technically he lived for another 20 to 30 minutes. But for all intents and purposes, he was DOA.
You know the extent of the injury. The president's head was practically blown off.
7 minutes ago, Jackie and her husband were smiling and waving at the crowd. Now she follows his lifeless body into the operating room.
President's wife, Jackie Kennedy, was not hurt. She walked into the hospital, had her husband stretcher side.
(1 p.m., November the 22nd, 1963. The city of Dallas is in shock. President Kennedy has just been shot. Just 30 minutes ago, Jackie and her husband had been smiling and waving at the crowd. Now she waits outside the emergency room at Parkland Hospital. But JFK, the 35th President of the United States, is gone. A doctor tells her, "We will not pronounce him dead until he has had the last rites." Kissing his body, Jackie begins to cry.
Just a moment, we have a bulletin coming in. We now switch you directly to Parkland Hospital and KBOX News Director Bill Hampton.
As Oswald surrenders, he says, "Well, it's over now."
The interesting thing about Oswald is he's always assumed to be guilty, and yet he was never tried, never brought before court, and never sentenced.
Within hours, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover will tell the world they have caught Kennedy's killer.
There's no way in the world that he could have determined that. He could have believed it, but until you check every possible contact that Oswald had, 2.5 years in Russia, and then the contacts he had in America, how can you possibly know that? But he's already announcing to the world, they're locked in.
Now a newly released memo reveals an astonishing fact. Hoover was determined to prove Oswald's guilt, no matter what. The thing I am concerned about is having something issued so we can convince the public that Oswald is the real assassin.
J. Edgar Hoover had something really important to hide, which was that the FBI knew a lot about Lee Harvey Oswald before the assassination, should have known that he was a real threat to President Kennedy, but failed to notify anybody about this, specifically not to notify the Secret Service that President Kennedy was going to Dallas, where Oswald lived.
One conspiracy theory states Hoover was part of a much larger cover-up, which believes Kennedy was killed by members of his own military and intelligence services, who feared the president was soft on communism and was going to warm up the Cold War with Russia.
This wasn't going to be good for America. To tell Americans that the government had been overthrown by the killing of the president, that it was coup d'etat in America.
Just after 2 p.m., Jackie climbs into a hearse with the body of her husband. Roy Kellerman and the Secret Service have ignored the Texas officials. They are all leaving for Washington. Helen O'Donnell's father helps carry the coffin.
My father said that they didn't want the president's body to be removed because they figured they're going to get the blame, so they want to make sure it's all done right. But my father was like, the hell with this.
Soon, the president's autopsy will reveal some extraordinary results. Friday, November the 22nd, 1963. Just over 2 hours ago, Jackie Kennedy and her husband were welcomed at Love Field by cheering, smiling crowds.
Mrs. Kennedy joins him in the throng of outstretched hands and cameras.
Now, the crowds are gone.
How can it be that you see someone so vibrant just over an hour ago, and now their life has ended? How did this happen, and who is to blame?
Jackie watches as Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman and his agents struggle to load her husband's body onto Air Force One. The coffin is too wide for the aircraft door. Kellerman and his team pull off the side handles.
The juxtaposition between those earlier images and then these darkly comic images of the Secret Service trying to load his casket. It really is a kind of a visceral power.
Finally, Jackie follows her husband back onto Air Force One.
They were all devastated, and none of them recovered, including my father. They felt responsible, and all that majesty was just destroyed in one shot, and that's sad.
As Jackie goes into deep shock, Helen O'Donnell's father becomes increasingly concerned.
He said he really thought at one point Jackie was going to have a heart attack. And he said, I just thought, I've got to get her out of here. He said, this is my last job for Jack Kennedy, who's my president but my friend. And my job is to get his body home to Washington and to get his wife home to Bobby.
While Jackie rests in the presidential suite, Roy Kellerman finds the atmosphere on Air Force One tense as the vice president's security team take charge. As Air Force One touches down at Andrews Air Force Base, Washington, millions tune in live to see Jackie Kennedy follow her husband's coffin into a hearse. She is still wearing her blood-stained pink suit.
The widow, on the arm of her brother-in-law, remains a towering figure of fortitude through her long ordeal.
Jackie accompanies her husband's body as it's taken to a military hospital. 7:30 p.m. President Kennedy's autopsy begins. Jackie has requested it is done at Bethesda Naval Hospital, as Jack had been a naval man. But today, others question the real reason for taking his body to a military hospital.
It was basically a national security move to a military hospital where more agreeable people could look over the body and could be twisted under military orders.
They wanted to have the autopsy done under military control. There were 33 people in the autopsy room that night, including 4-star admirals and generals. These guys were told what to do. There's no question about it.
Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman is also in the autopsy room. He helps the pathologists identify the president's wounds.
When the doctors were working on the body, he made a crucial observation. He noticed the back of the president's head was gone, which is critical if you believe there's a conspiracy, because again, entrance wounds are small, exit wounds are large.
The autopsy reveals Kennedy was struck by 2 shots from the rear. Vital information that will lead investigators to conclude Oswald was the lone gunman. But for many, this evidence didn't add up. The Dallas doctors had said they saw a large exit wound in the back of the president's head. indicating a shot from the front, and therefore more than one shooter.
The autopsy is essential in providing an authoritative account of the causes of the president's death, but it did not do that. There's a lack of agreement about whether they are looking at a shot that has entered the president's body from the front or the back, and that immediately raises the issue about whether or not there are one or two gunmen.
For decades, veteran pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht has believed the autopsy findings are wrong. He's convinced the president was shot from both the rear and the front.
It's infuriating every time I talk about it, and today I'm talking about it maybe for the 10,000th time. It just infuriates me. The passion just automatically flows. I don't have to press any buttons or pretend that I'm angry.
Suspicion has also been cast on some of those closest to the president, in particular Secret Serviceman Roy Kellerman and his team of agents.
They definitely felt like they failed in their mission. They had one job to do, the number one most important job. The life of the president was taken.
Although he never spoke about the assassination, Kellerman hinted he thought there was more to the story than just Lee Harvey Oswald.
I spoke to his widow, her name was June, and she said that Roy accepted that there was a conspiracy. In fact, when he spoke to the House Select Committee, he says, "I'll accept that." It's like, wait, so Roy accepted there was a conspiracy? Yes, he believed there was a conspiracy, but she never got any details from him, nothing.
In recent years, millions of pages of new information have been released. Today, there is overwhelming evidence that the US intelligence services knew more than they said about Lee Harvey Oswald.
I always thought the valor of the Secret Service, how they would literally, throw themselves in front of potential assassins' bullets, and always fascinated me. And the question to me was always, wait a minute, why didn't these agents do more to protect the man? And the more I looked into it, the more I realized there were a lot of anomalies, a lot of questions that needed to be answered on the subject.
No one has spent more time studying the Secret Service's actions that day than Vince Palomera.
Standard operating procedure in an open motorcade would have been for the agents to be running, walking, or jogging with the presidential limousine. And there was also two handrails in the back for an agent or agents to hold on to, so they would be in close proximity to the president. Agents not riding on the rear of the limo is a huge issue in this case. The Secret Service agents are powerless to really do much of anything if they're not close to the president. And official mythology, I like to call it, is that President Kennedy allegedly ordered the agents off the car 4 days before Dallas.
Claiming President Kennedy asked for changes to the motorcade's normal security protocols had been a recurring theme during the Warren Commission.
I spoke to the special agent in charge of the White House detail, the #1 agent, Gerald Bain. I asked him, President Kennedy, I understand he was difficult to protect, right? He didn't want the agents on the back of the car, and he told me, this is the exact quote, "I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the back of the car. If you look at the newsreels, you'll see agents on there." Well, one by one, I spoke to many of his colleagues, not only in the Secret Service, but actually White House aides that were not Secret Service agents, and it was a landslide. They were all telling me the same thing.
Supposedly Kennedy ordered the agents off the back of the limousine. No. He had nothing to do with that. The record of history, that is false.
President Kennedy, very nice man, not difficult to protect, did not order the agents off the back of the car.
This complete departure from procedure is captured here as the motorcade begins to leave Love Field Airport in Dallas.
Jogging beside the car was an agent. In the followed car behind him, another agent rises from his seat and does hand gestures like this, obviously to order him to cease and desist. The agent stops in his tracks 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times, goes like this. And actually, that's the universal body language for what is going on. Turns out the agent name was Don Lawton, and he's the agent who's formerly told to cease and desist by shift leader Emory Roberts, who rises in his seat with the hand gestures, and you see Don Lawton going like this. Don Lawton rode on the back of the car on the Chicago trip earlier in 1963 and 4 days before in Tampa. But he's relegated to meaningless love field luggage duty during the motorcade, during the assassination. It's ridiculous.
Secret Service agent Clint Hill is also recalled from his position on the opposite side of the limousine. Emory Roberts had been the only one of 3 Secret Service shift leaders from the White House that was part of the motorcade.
Emory Roberts was in charge of the follow-up car that was immediately behind JFK, full of Secret Service agents. He was the general, so to speak, of the follow-up car. If he said something, that's how it went.
Emory Roberts, however, received his orders from Floyd Boring, the number 2 man of the Secret Service White House detail, based in Washington.
Floyd Boring, he was in charge of planning the Texas trip, and he was the one who gave out assignments.
In an interview with the Assassination Records Review Board in 1996, he stated that there had been no change in policy for the Dallas trip, and put the blame on President Kennedy. The number 1 man and head of the White House detail, Gerald Bain, was on vacation starting the week before the Texas trip, which left the immediate handling of the trip to Boring. Floyd Boring's right-hand man in charge of the logistics on the ground in Texas was Special Agent Winston Lawson.
Winston Lawson came from the Buffalo, Syracuse, New York area. He was a former counterintelligence agent in the Army, and he joined the Secret Service in 1959. And again, he was an advance agent, an agent that would actually go to the different cities, towns in America and overseas in advance to work with the local police and dignitaries and whatnot to get everything in line with motorcade rides, building security, etc., etc.
Lawson, assisted by Agent Roger Warner, set the order of the vehicles in the Dallas motorcade.
The normal order would have been to have a pilot car and a lead car, which was done in Dallas. Then you had a flatbed truck of the press photographers in front of the limousine filming and being eyewitnesses, and that in and of itself is a deterrent. And you had the press buses close behind the limousine, again, professional newsmen, eyewitnesses, they would have been there filming.
Conveniently, the press was moved back at the last minute. There wouldn't have been a need for Abraham Zapruder, an amateur, to film the assassination.
Another break from routine in the Dallas motorcade, the positioning of police motorcycles around the president's limousine.
As with any other motorcade, the Secret Service worked hand in hand with local authorities to ensure the safety of the president. Usually surrounding the car, there would be a group of motorcycles. This was not only to obscure or block the view of potential assassins, but also to prevent anyone from the public who might be viewing, who got too excited, from approaching the car.
And up to and including the day before the assassination, this held true. In his prior Texas stops in San Antonio, Houston, and Fort Worth, normally there were 6 to 9 motorcycle officers around the presidential limousine in a wedge formation, including flanking the car, which means in translation, they were riding right beside JFK. Then all of a sudden there is a last-minute change, and the motorcycles are reduced to 4 beside the car, but then they're not even beside the car, they're not flanking anymore, they're moved behind. Translation, the formation was meaningless. It offered no protection at all. In fact, when the shooting began, you don't even see the motorcycle officers around the car.
Agent Lawson told the Warren Commission why he had ordered the motorcycles to fall back from the limousine.
Well, it's my understanding he couldn't hear a conversation well. And that's why he didn't want the motorcycles beside him. And yet they had no problem that morning in Fort Worth, the day before in San Antonio and Houston, and 4 days before, a week before, a month before, the year before, the years before. They left Kennedy a sitting duck.
Another line of protection for the president that wasn't used was the limousine's bubble top.
The bubble top was a plexiglass covering that was put on the car, the presidential limousine. The conventional wisdom that it was bulletproof or bullet resistant. Turns out it was not bulletproof or bullet resistant in the standard way we think of that. However, it was a psychological deterrent because most people assumed it was bulletproof.
Popular belief has it that the limousine's bubble top was not used for two reasons. One, because what started as an overcast and dreary day turned sunny and clear.
The actual films and photos of several motorcades shows the bubble top on in the brightest weather conditions imaginable. So there's a myth that it was only on there for inclement weather. Not true. And the bottom line, what the bubble top would have done is it would have obscured an assassin's view via the sun's glare.
The second reason most often given as to why the bubble top had not been used is that the president had requested not to use it.
But I spoke to the agent who was the driver of the follow-up car, Sam Kinney. Sam Kinney adamantly on 3 different occasions told me that President Kennedy had nothing to do with it. It was solely his responsibility.
Supposedly, JFK said, I'm quoting now, get that goddamn bubble top off. Listen, that is not true.
The bubble top came in 6 pieces, but sometimes it was on there for just the front and rear pieces were on, so it would be an open car and some semblance of protection as well. A partial bubble top with the front and rear pieces on, and he would be able to get air and be able to stand up, and he didn't have that configuration. It's a question of why. Why wasn't at least that configuration used in Dallas?
Another troubling inconsistency with Secret Service protocols was the monitoring of buildings.
Buildings were not properly monitored in Dallas. Windows were not even properly monitored by the Secret Service. When Lawson said it was usual instructions to give out these orders to scan the windows along the parade route, but he didn't remember giving out the order or not. And it turns out that Dallas police, that were also involved in security of the motorcade route, said that no orders were given. The bottom line protocol were agents or local police or both were supposed to monitor buildings. Dealey Plaza was not properly cleared, was not properly monitored, and the overpasses, any potential overpasses that would have been clear to spectators and manned by local police.
Even more alarming is what happened inside the Secret Service car directly behind the president's limousine once shots rang out. Shift leader Emory Roberts would give an order to the other agents in the car.
When the assassination begins, he orders the men not to move. Sam Kinney, the driver of the follow-up car, who's right beside him, confirmed to me that this happened. He ordered the men not to move at the beginning of the assassination.
Emory Roberts supposedly ordered the men not to move. That's exactly right.
These men were sworn to protect the president, to dive in front of a bullet if need be, to sacrifice their body. And you mean to tell me this man is going to order them to cease and desist when the shooting begins?
And just what were the Secret Service agents who were actually inside the president's limousine doing at the time of the shooting?
Agents Bill Greer and Roy Kellerman were pivotal to the success of the assassination, and they were pivotal to the success of the assassination through inaction. Bill Greer was the driver of the president's limousine in Dallas. Roy Kellerman was riding right beside him. Greer hits the gas pedal, Kennedy lives. First shot rings out. Bill Greer looks back at the president. His foot's on the brake too because the car slows down. It's only going 11.2 miles an hour. It's crawling at this point. And then Roy Kellerman says, get out of line, we've been hit. That's when Bill Greer turns around a second time and is staring at Kennedy and doesn't do anything until Kennedy is killed. Yes, it was only 6 to 8 seconds, depending on estimates, but that is a lifetime for a Secret Service agent. Count down 6 to 8 seconds and watch the video of Reagan being shot. These men, by the time the 8-second shot, they're well out of there. Let alone 2, 3, 5 seconds. Amazing what they did. And Roy Kellerman, for his part, doesn't jump. He doesn't jump back, and he's turned around. He's staring at Kennedy too.
The shooting had stopped by the time Clint Hill, who was assigned to protect the First Lady, finally leapt onto the limousine. Could these monumental lapses by the Secret Service just have been a series of unfortunate oversights?
How convenient that this all happened on the day allegedly a lone assassin struck the president down. 1963 protocol, President Kennedy should have lived in Dallas. He should have lived past the Dallas motorcade. With Floyd Boring in charge of protection of the president by planning the Texas trip, Emory Roberts in charge of the follow-up car, and Bill Greer, the driver of the president's car. Those 3 men bear the largest burden of what went down in Dallas. The buck stops with the Secret Service. Yeah.
Roy Kellerman spoke with FBI agents at the president's autopsy. He was quoted with a surprising statement.
Agent Kellerman said that the security for this trip was the most stringent and thorough ever employed by the Secret Service for any trip the president ever made. Now, if you believe that, I've got some land I want to sell you.
In 1995, the government's Assassination Records Review Board, wanting to compare security in Texas against other recent trips, requested to see all Secret Service documents pertaining to presidential visits around that time. Rather than comply, the Secret Service destroyed many of its records from the fall of 1963, making any true comparisons impossible.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our next speaker. Are you ready? Did you have a good lunch? Did you have a good experience down at Dealey Plaza? Are you enjoying the conference? You want to hear this man speak? You want me to shut up? Yes, you do. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is a giant in the JF Conference assassination community. He's a giant literally and figuratively. 6'6". Tonight, Vince Palmara is going to be speaking on the Secret Service and JFK. Vince is the world authority on the Secret Service, has spoken to both medical personnel on duty in Dallas that day, as well as retired agents. He discovered that at least 3 Secret Service agents who crossed the line, past simple laziness or incompetence, and either cooperated with a conspiracy or allowed it to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Vincent Palmara. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for the enthusiastic intro, and thanks everyone for being here. Yeah, basically that's what it is. I said, what's your theory? Here's my fact. President Kennedy should have survived Dallas. It's as simple as that. And I have a lot of material, so we'll skip all the, get right to it. Okay. Now, the first thing is not technically a security issue, but it is a photo coverage, eyewitness issue, and the lack thereof in Dealey Plaza. Press photo coverage involving professional eye and ear witnesses was still in motion photography. Normally, a flatbed truck was in front of the presidential limousine. Here we are, Honolulu, Hawaii, June of '63. 2 flatbed trucks, notice the arrows, for the presidential limousine. You wouldn't have had to rely on amateurs like Abraham Zapruder, Orville Nix, everybody else. And obviously, professional eye and ear witnesses. There you go. So that's just Hawaii. Here we are in Berlin. Again, you have agents on the rear of the limousine. We'll get to that issue in a moment. But there it is, flatbed truck. And we'll get to the $64 million question why they weren't there in Dallas. Here is a live television feed in Rome, Italy in early July of '63. Yep, that gentleman right there is filming. And in front of him is the press photographers, still in motion photographers, filming the motorcade. There's also agents on the back of the limousine there as well, Gerald Blaine and David Grant. Here is one of my, I could have been up here all day. I figured I gotta weed this down as far as documents go. This is from Mexico, photographers poll, talking about how they'll be in front of the limousine. This was standard before Dallas. It was standard since the FDR days, FDR, Truman, Eisenhower, and Kennedy, before 1963, before November 22nd to be exact. They were there all the time. Okay. And here again, not only just the press photographers in front of the limousine, you had the press van very close by, press bus, very close behind. And besides, we'll get to this issue in a moment about the agents being on the rear of the car. There's Gerald Blaine of the Kennedy detail fame there. And there you go. And it makes you think, wow, if they would have been there in Dallas. But hold that thought for a moment. And again, I could have been up here. Very similar looking documents of many trips, especially in DC. This is the show, the pull trucks which are the two flatbed trucks. Number one's the presidential limousine. There's the wire service cars. These were all from the JFK library. And I can't stress enough, as I do with my President Kennedy in life photographs, a lot of these documents and photographs have only become available in the last 5 to 10 years. Really, actually last 7 and on. They weren't available for many, many years. So definitely something to ponder as far as thank God for the internet and the digital age. A lot of stuff's come out. Here we are, 4 days before Dallas, Tampa. It's Chuck Zaboral and Don Lawton walking with a limousine. And you might say, hey, who took this photograph, Vince? Well, that was the White House photographer, Cecil Stoughton. Either him or Robert Knudsen were always in the fob car. And they were there up to, hey, the day before San Antonio. And hey, what's this view from? Oh, it's only from a police helicopter. Was filming the motorcade. Nothing to see here. See? By press coverage the day before, they were filming the motorcade from a police helicopter. This is San Antonio, Texas, and again, it's the day before the assassination. There is Cecil Stoughton taking his photograph. There's even a close-up view there. Yet in Dallas, in the interest of time, I'm not going to read this whole thing, Tom Dillard was forceful about this on C-SPAN in 1993, saying we lost our position at the airport. It was canceled at the last minute. Flatbed trucks. He was very forceful about this on C-SPAN. This is his sworn Warren Commission testimony that normally a flatbed truck precedes the motorcade, and they weren't there. And it was a Secret Service that canceled the flatbed truck. So there you go. What need amateurs like Abraham Zapruder and everybody else? And this is an interesting news article just saying President Kennedy's administration, it was argued by some of the television cameras, could not get a good view of the president in the parade. It was also noted the Secret Service men were not pleased around the president as closely as they have been on other occasions. This is a very important issue here. Secret Service agents often walked, jogged, or ran with the limousine, or actually rode on the rear of President Kennedy's limousine. And here's the surprising, the bubble top was used in 1/3 of all of JFK's motorcades, often in good weather. It wasn't just rain. Here's Roy Kellerman, Dallas fame, and Bob Lilly. Okay, I spoke to Robert Lilly. He told me that, President Kennedy never interfered with our actions at all. Whatever he wants, the way it will be. He told us on election night, and he was with him from election night 1960 until October of 1963 when he got transferred. Riding on the back of the limousine, they reached speeds of 50 miles an hour. This is in Puerto Rico. No rain, beautiful, very hot conditions. They were going up to upwards of 50 miles an hour with the bubble top on. Here we are, early July '63, again in Rome. David Grant near JFK. David Grant was Clint Hill's brother-in-law. And Gerald Blaine of the Kennedy Detail book fame. And in the back of the car, beautiful motorcycle formation. Again, the back of your mind should always be, wow, imagine if this was in Dallas. And why it wasn't in Dallas, we'll get to that in a moment. This is another segment of the different vehicle of the Italy trip. There they are again. What's unstated in these photographs is obviously the press photographers are filming it. It's right in front of the motorcade too. Not amateurs, in this case it's life. Here we are in Bogota, Colombia. Roy Kellerman and Bob Lilly again on the back of the car. There's a full bubble top, closed follow-up car, good motorcycle formation, guards on either side, armed forces guards. Going at a pretty fast clip too. Here's the late when Lawson just passed away. In front of the limousine, there's Art Godfrey, JFK, walking with the limousine. There's Agent Bill Duncan. These are different trips. This is South Dakota, walking with the limousine, Kennedy. Here's 4 days before Dallas. Chuck Zaboral and Don Lawton working on the back of the limousine. Don Lawton told me, and you'll hear the clip in a moment, he said, we always had regrets, remorse. Who knows, if they only would have left guys in the back of the car. You can hindsight yourself to death. The they is the Secret Service, nobody else. Not boogeymen, not the FBI, it's the Secret Service. Here we are in Germany, 2 agents on the rear of the car. Another segment of the Germany trip, 2 agents on the rear of the car. This is Hawaii, agents running with the car, like in a diamond formation. A lot of them Ron Pontius and some other agents. Here's New Orleans, again, agents walking with the car, jogging with the car. Here we are in Los Angeles, 1963. Agent Bob Lilly again, probably a well-meaning woman, well-wisher, but still brushed her away for Kennedy's protection. Here we are in North Carolina, agents around a limousine. And here again, here's the bubble top. Can't stress this enough. President Kennedy used the bubble top in approximately 1/3 of all his motorcades. And it wasn't in bad weather, it was good weather trips. He's smiling, all this stuff about, oh, he didn't like the bubble top, all mythology, all Jim Bishop, William Manchester, pardon the word crap, after the fact, blaming Kennedy for everything. You know, he was assassinated, his character was assassinated, and hey, let's blame him for the assassination too. Stupid. Here's the bubble top again, bright sunshiny day. Here's the bubble top and agents running the limousine. This is North Dakota this time. Hey, here's our buddy again, Roy Keller. This is the partial bubble top, and this is an option that was not explored in Dallas. Imagine if they would have had the rear piece on and left that middle piece open so Kennedy could intermittently stand and wave and whatnot. That's an option that could have been explored. In the interest of time, I'll just let you know that Secret Service agent Sam Kinney was the driver of the fall car. I spoke to him 3 times. He was adamant to me that he, Sam, was solely responsible for the bubble top's removal. He said Kennedy had nothing to do with it. I said, what about Kenny O'Donnell? He's blamed like it's Kenny O'Donnell, nothing to do with it. I am the sole responsibility of that, and I've had to live with that at that time. He said for 30 years. I spoke to him in the early 90s 3 times. And yeah, so there you go. And here we are in Philadelphia, the partial bubble top again, rearward piece, front piece. There's Kennedy. Yeah, he could stand up and wave every once in a while. They're also good at a good clip too. It wasn't like they were going 11 miles an hour. Here's the full bubble top again. You see the military aid in between the driver and the agent in charge. This was sent to me by a nice lady on Facebook. That's her dad guarding the bubble top limousine used in Duluth in September of 1963. This is a nighttime motorcade in West Virginia, September of '63, just a couple days later, West Virginia, and here's JFK in a bubble top, smiling. I thought he didn't like that bubble top. Didn't mind it, no rain, no nothing. Is it Chicago? Oh, there's the bubble top again. Mayor Daley, hey, here's JFK smiling. I thought he didn't like the bubble top. Here it is again, at a military base in the South. I'm not exactly sure right off. I think it might be Tennessee, but in any event, there's the partial bubble top. There's the Washington, D.C. bubble top. 1 month before the assassination, there's the partial bubble top, front and rear piece. The windows rolled up slightly. Imagine if that would have been there in Dallas. Again, it's the Secret Service was in control of all this. It's not the FBI. It's not boogeymen. It's not the mafia. The Secret Service was in control of all this. And there's agents around the car in the Orange Bowl, Miami. There's Agent Bert DeFries in the back of the car with a full bubble top in Ireland, of all places. There's Agent Walt Coughlin, I'm naming these men because I spoke to them, in England with the bubble top. There's agents in the back car in Boston, I think somewhere around mid-October '63. There's Mexico, Clint Hill in his Jackie in the back of the car, full bubble top, running with a limousine, scorching hot day, no rain. Oh, Kennedy didn't mind the bubble top again. Take Jim Bishop, William Manchester, obviously the war report, with a huge grain of salt. Don't believe that stuff about blaming Kennedy. He's not around to defend himself. Yet in Dallas, Kennedy is literally a sitting duck. Look at that. No motorcycles by the car, no agents, obviously no bubble top, no nothing. I mean, somebody in the crowd could have threw something at him. That's terrible, terrible. Okay, and here is, look at these arrows. First one, furthest on the left, is Don Lawton. The other agent is Hank Ribka. The other one's Jack Reddy. And there's a little confusion. Part of the confusion is by myself. For the longest time, I got the 2 agents confused. I thought it was Don Lawton, it was Henry Ribka. Oh no, it turned out it was both agents were actually there walking, jogging in a limousine. It's only Don Lawton that shows up with the more famous video footage we'll get to in a second here. Here they are. This is on the left, Agent Ribka. In front of him is Don Lawton walking with a limousine. I discovered this in 1991. Obviously, I didn't film it, but discovered in 1991 raw footage from WFAA, the ABC affiliate in Dallas. It was just raw footage, and also I'm watching the motorcade. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Why is he waving his hand 3 times, and the other agent's like pulling him away, it looked like. And here we go. Let's see here. Get this video going. Hold on 1 second. be with you in a second. Turn that on.
Number 3, in response to political staff, agents who usually surround the limousine were pulled away so people could see the president better. One reacted by throwing up his hands in disgust. 3 times he protested, what would prove to be a fatal error. Kennedy was killed by the 3rd shot from a sniper rifle, well after agents, if they had been nearby, could have pulled him out of harm's way. Number 3, in response to political staff, agents who usually surround the limousine were pulled away so people could see the president better. One reacted by throwing up his hands in disgust. 3 times he protested, what would prove to be a fatal error. Kennedy was killed by the 3rd shot from a sniper rifle, well after agents, if they had been nearby, could have pulled him out of harm's way.
Just a brief note on that. That was Discovery Channel, Secrets of the Secret Service. I was a researcher on that, and yeah, it was actually almost like an official Secret Service documentary. That actual real Secret Service agents of the present time, at that time, 10 years ago, and some former ones. And to my great amazement, they included that video clip. I didn't think they would touch it with a 10-foot pole, and they put that in there. And again, why was that agent being waved away? There you go. It was a Secret Service decision.
Number 3.
And then, again, imagine if those agents would have been there. Protective function. At the very least, a rear shot would have been blocked, even a frontal shot. They could have witnessed something. They could have jumped on them, prevented, less people around, less professional eye and ear witnesses. Got to think of that factor as well. Here we are, September of 1960. Well, we'll get this now. JFK and LBJ, they rode in 2 official motorcades together. Dallas, okay, the Texas trip, and also when he was a candidate. And there's the local armed forces next to him, whatnot. He didn't mind them back then. And here we are, he's shaking hands with Chief Curry. And even though Secret Service were not officially warranted with guarding the presidents at that time or presidential candidates, there is an agent right there from the local field office, and behind him on the other side are other agents in armed forces and police. And again, he didn't mind that when he was running for the presidency in 1960 in Dallas. Gets hit, 3 years later, another motorcade, LBJ, first time since then, and there's nothing. And in the interest of time, I'll just kind of go through this a little bit, but I spoke to these gentlemen starting in early 1990s. It's before the internet really kicked in. There was computer bulletin boards, but basically I was just an amateur stranger on the phone calling these guys. They lived in all parts of the country. I was a little amateur me. I was only in my mid-20s at the time. Didn't have a book out, didn't have hardly anything. Nobody really knew who I was. And I asked him the same thing, and he kept on like they were reading cue cards. The #1 agent of the White House detail, well, I'll get to him in a second. I'll get to James Riley. Chief, no president will tell the Secret Service what they can or cannot do. That's what he testified under oath to the Warren Commission. Okay? Actually, this, okay, now I'm on the right spot. Okay, yeah, President, this is basically debunking the whole idea about the president being the boss of the Secret Service, which isn't true. And there you go. And then his predecessor, Huey Ballman, said the same thing, that he could legally countermand a direct decision by the president. This is a story that came out in the AP November 15th, 1963. It stated that the Secret Service can overrule even the president where his personal security is involved. George McNally, former agent, agreed. Again, in the interest of time, Mike Riley, Bill Carter. Harry Truman agreed, said the Secret Service was the only boss the President of the United States really had. Lyndon Johnson's on record saying the same thing. Bill Clinton, quoting those 2 gentlemen in 1999 in dedication to the Secret Service building in D.C., said the same thing. I have to agree, that's true. They are the only boss we have. No boss when it comes to security, mind you. Okay. And again, just more of the same in the interest of time. Basically just saying the same thing. There's contemporary news articles saying that this whole thing, people have a tendency, you think it's very natural thing. Hey, he's the commander-in-chief, he's the president of the United States. Little Secret Service, come on. When it comes to the president's security, the Secret Service is boss, not the other way around. So don't believe Bishop Manchester, Gerald Blaine, or Clint Hill in their books about that. Not true. Again, Kennedy ordering agents off the limit. This is what I was about to get to before when I was talking about the agents I spoke to. The #1 agent of the White House detail, Gerald Blaine. I don't remember Kennedy ever saying that he didn't want anybody in the back of his car. You talk about a moment that made me want to drop the phone in shock. You know, David Lifton talks about the Seibert and O'Neill report, you know, was his linchpin moment. He couldn't believe the surgery of the head area. He was reading this. When he told me this on the phone, I'm stammering. I can't believe it. I don't remember Kennedy ever saying he wanted to be on the back of his car. This is the #1 agent with Kennedy he was with the Secret Service from FDR to LBJ, but he was with Kennedy from election night up to, well, he wasn't there at the time. He was on vacation, but we'll get to that in a moment. #2 agent, Floyd Bourne, was adamant to me 3 different times. JFK was very easygoing. He didn't interfere with our actions at all, never did. He was a very nice man. And he said the same thing. And Bill Adams, I don't know, whatever happened to this researcher from California 20 years ago, good guy. Him and I pried out of the JFK Library release of Floyd Bourning's 1976 oral history of the JFK Library. And he says that JFK and his staff were very cooperative with the Secret Service. Nothing about, oh, he wore us off the car and all this other stuff. The advance agent for Dallas wrote to me in a letter from 2004, I don't know of any standing orders for the agent to stay off the back of the car. It never came to my attention as such. Winston Lawson was the lead advance agent. If anybody's going to know about it, would be him. He didn't know. Whew. Art Godfrey, same thing. Shift leader. These are the brass of Secret Service. Not like little, you know, like Gerald Blaine who's a buck private. These are the guys who are, you know, the top guys. He's saying the same thing. There's no truth to this thing about Kennedy ordering us off the car. It's baloney. C.M. Kinney, driver of the fob car in Dallas, Tampa, and many other stops, said the same thing. Oh no, there's no truth to that at all. And you'll get to hear some of these audio clips in a moment. Bob Lilly, like I mentioned before, he was extremely cooperative. Whatever you guys want is the way it will be. Don Lawton, he said, not only did he say to me that, you know, if only they would have left guys in the back of the car, you can hindsight yourself to death. He also, in 2013, it came out in an article, a woman friend of his that was in the Army said that, yeah, he always regretted not being in the back of a car. I should have been there. I should have been there. Dave Powers, arguably Kennedy's best friend on countless motorcades, said the same thing. In a letter to me from 1993, the agents never had to be told to get off the back of the car. And 2 researcher friends of mine, independently of myself, spoke to Dave Powers and conveyed the same thing to me. And they were excited when they read it. Vince, you're not going to believe he said the same thing to me. I actually spoke to him at the JFK Library in, you know, the 80s and 90s, whatnot. Says, oh no, he didn't have time for that. He's too busy running the government to look back with his bad back. I don't want you guys on the back of the car. People don't think about the logistics of this stuff. And again, it's just more, this whole thing about Kennedy ordering agents off the limo is debunked. Sam Solomon I spoke to, Frank Stoner, Gerald O'Rourke, agents on the Texas trip, Vincent Bras, famous for protecting Truman during the assassination attempt, Larry Newman. Here's an interesting one. Gerald Blaine, the author of the Kennedy Detail, years before his book came out, said, yeah, JFK was very cooperative. He didn't interfere with our actions. President Kennedy was very likable. He never had a harsh word for anyone. He never interfered with our actions at all. And when I relayed to him this thing, if you ever read William Manchester's book, The Death of a President, is a big deal made about, supposedly Kennedy said, get these Ivy League charlatans off the back of my car. A lot of agents said it wasn't true. He just said, I heard it from the guys. I can't remember who said it. I can't remember. You might say, okay, what's the importance of that, Vince? Blaine's memory got a whole lot better 5 years later in his book. He said, I heard it loud and clear over my walkie-talkie. President Kennedy said, get those Ivy League charlatans off the back of the car. But he told little old me about 6 years before, I heard it from the guys. I can't remember who said it. And what really kills it is Florida Congressman Sam Gibbons, in a letter from me from 2004, I rode with Kennedy every time he rode. I heard no such order. As I remember it, the agents rode on the rear bumper all the way. Kennedy was very happy during his visit to Tampa. And this is amazing. The audio is real bad. It's on my YouTube channel, so I didn't put a clip of that. But Rocky Stone, Fort Worth, Texas policeman, that day on NBC, he said, and you can read this for yourself, but I'll just basically, he said, and again, he little slip of the tongue the way he spoke, so there's a little bit of weird grammar, but he said, they said that he always went by their decisions to protect him, that he was always considerate of their fact, that he never tried to do anything that they thought was against the rules in which to protect him. And again, they had nothing but praise for President Kennedy, his manner in which he felt about the Secret Service men. They said he was by far the most considerate of them and their feelings than any other president. But if you read Bishop Manchester, the Warren Report, Blaine's book, and even Clint Hill's book, you come away with, wow, shame Kennedy died, but man, it's not like he had it coming to him. He didn't want these agents by the car. He didn't want the bubble top. He didn't want the motorcycles by the car. It's all nonsense. And here is 2010. I guess he was thinking about posterity. And yeah.
Well, he can tell you what he wants done, and he can tell you certain things, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. And what we used to do was always agree with the president, then we do what we felt was best anyway. Well, he can tell you what he wants done, and he can tell you certain things, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. And what we used to do was always agree with the president, then we do what we felt was best anyway.
Again, he's basically been there. Yeah, we'd always agree with the president. We'd do what we felt was best anyway. The president wasn't the boss of the Secret Service, and even if he wanted to, I think he was being just a little jovial about it, but they did what they were going to do anyway. President Kennedy was thinking about his speech. He was thinking about legislation. He was thinking about world events with his bad back even. The last thing he was thinking about is, why is our Godfrey back there? Get him off that car. People believe that stuff. Can't believe it. And yeah, we'll play these. Now, some of the audio is a little up and down. Keep in mind, early 90s phone connections and whatnot. But yeah, some of the actual interviews, and all these gentlemen have passed away. Yeah, Sam Kinney, driver of the follow-up car, as you can see, there he is. I'll play this in a moment. And Floyd Boring and Gerald Bain. And yeah, they're all denying to me that President Kennedy ever ordered him off the car.
One of the other things I found out interestingly enough is there's no truth to this thing about supposedly Kennedy ordered the agents off the back of the limousine. No, he had nothing to do with that. I figured that, because you know what? William Manchester makes the claim that Floyd Boring was ordered by Kennedy, and I'm quoting what it says in the book, it says, keep those Ivy League charlatans off the back of my car. That is false. Yes, I don't take it as the gospel, but I know other people have. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it repeated where President Kennedy told the agents, I guess yourself and other people, get these men off my limousine, don't do this. Okay. Very nice man. Yeah, it's never interfered with us at all. That's I had been on the trip before. Trip where the last vacation he had. Oh, okay, the one that Florida. That's right. Oh, okay, yeah. There's something relating in his book about that too. Supposedly, he makes it out like President Kennedy was real authoritarian and ordered the men off the back of the limousine. Well, that's not true. I didn't think that was either. Yeah, Rufus Youngblood, it was one of the things he told me. He says that don't believe Manchester or Bishop. It's head of the White House. Yeah, definitely take the one from Kennedy hasn't said that he didn't mind anybody on the back of the car. Kennedy hasn't said that he didn't mind anybody on the back of the car. You know what I mean? Well, I know that, but you still have regrets, remorse, you know, whatever. Who knows if they left guys on the back of the car or something. You never know. You second guess. You can hindsight yourself to death. You know what I mean? Well, I know that, but you still have regrets, remorse, you know, whatever. Who knows if they left guys on the back of the car or something. You never know. You second guess. You can hindsight yourself to death.
This is the lead advanced agent for Dallas, Winston Lawson. Keep in mind, the lead advanced agent for Dallas, Winston Lawson. This is an amazing letter he wrote me in January 12th, 2004. I do not know of any standing orders for the agents to stay off the back of the car. After all, foothold and handholds were built into that particular vehicle. I am sure it would have been on a case-by-case basis depending on the event, intelligence, threats, etc. Keep in mind, ostensibly, officially, allegedly, there were no threats found in Dallas. Jerry Bain, a special agent in charge of the White House detail, as it was known then, Presidential Protective Division currently, would have been privy to that type of info more than I. See my other video where Bain adamantly denies that President Kennedy ever ordered the agents off the car. However, it never came to my attention as such. I am certain that agents were on the back on certain occasions. Again, I do not know of any standing orders for the agents to stay off the back of the car. However, it never came to my attention as such. This totally debunks the Kennedy detail. Here's the fateful Tampa motorcade of November 18th, 1963. This is Congressman Sam Gibbons. There's JFK, Senator Smathers, Agent Don Lawton, Agent Chuck Saburl, Agent Floyd Boring, Agent Bill Greer. Let's focus on Congressman Gibbons. What did Congressman Gibbons have to say about the whole notion of JFK allegedly ordering the agents off the car in Tampa? Here's what he told me in this letter dated January 15th, 04, years before the Kennedy detail saw the light of day. I rode with Kennedy every time he rode. I heard no such order. As I remember it, the agents rode on the rear bumper all the way. Kennedy was very happy during his visit to Tampa. Sam Gibbons. This is an amazing letter from Dave Powers, arguably JFK's best friend for years and the former curator of the JFK Library. September 10th, 1993. Okay. Also, unless they were running along beside the limo, the Secret Service rode in a car behind the president, so no, they never had to be told to get off the limo. And some actual clips of motorcades here. Interesting time. I thought it would be good to play these clips and show some of the letters. Whether the guy at a lectern to sit there and tell you, that'd be good to have, even with some of the audio visual. Yeah, some of the audio goes up and down depending on the source, but actually hear them. And again, a lot of these gentlemen, well, all these gentlemen have passed away now, so.
Thus, the motorcade through the streets of Berlin began. The entire route was lined with people who had waited hours to see the president, the man dedicated to the defense of peace and freedom. Never before had the Berlin
Agents on the rear of the car, standard stuff. The audio is not important on these clips. They're just, you got the Irish jig music in there. It's from Trip to Ireland. Hey, there's the press pool in front, filming the motorcade. Look at all those motorcycles. In a moment, you'll see some of my, I'd call them friends, but I don't know if they think of me that way, but some of the former agents, Sam Sullivan, Gerald Blaine of the Kennedy detail, Ron Pontius, Win Lawson's also on the back of the car there. They're using the fob car because the limousine broke down. I think it was in Belfast, one of the legs of the trip. Sometimes you'll see the SX-100, sometimes you'll see the halfback. Here we are in Italy. It's Win Lawson on the left getting on the back of the car. There's Gerald Blaine of the Kennedy detail. Ooh, forget you saw that clip. Gerald Blaine said that they weren't supposed to be on the back of the car. Ooh. Note the sarcasm.
Here.
Was killed. The Secret Service agents normally walk directly beside the car on either side. We do not see any in this photograph, but usually 2 or 3 Secret Service agents will walk on either side of the car so that they are there to spot anyone who looks like a troublemaker.
That was from that day. It's Ron Gardner. And this is amazing. This came out a few years ago on YouTube. Again, the audio is not important for this part. This is JFK's trip to San Diego. And you're going to see, they're even going to note it in the narration in a moment, a whole bunch of Marines on each side of the street. You're going to see the press buses in front, press flatbed trucks, I should say.
Knowing that the president's about to go by. The band in the background, Crawford High School band, striking up. Hoping that the president will be here any moment and wanting to.
You can see them right there. The narrator says they're 5 or 6 feet apart.
May I again point out that the picture you see is not from 54th and El Cajon.
The 2 press trucks, including a live mobile feed, still in motion photography, and more importantly, Marines facing the crowd 5 to 6 feet apart.
It's from a vantage point about 4 blocks west of where we are, looking west and seeing the first of the motorcade as it goes by. And that's part of the crowd lining the streets, lots of children, the Marines with their hands full. The motorcycle officer, I understand, has been instructed to make sure that everybody does not get out into the street. No reports of whether or not he has run over any toes or not, but doing a good job of keeping them by. Now, the presidential motorcade is approaching 54th and El Cajon. Everybody here is on his feet. The people are beginning to cheer. The people behind me are, of course, quite expectant.
And get a little
quite,
sneak preview of something you'll see in a
quite
second.
excited
Yeah,
about
again,
this
the audio is
occasion.
not important. Other
First car coming
briefings,
by
but
our camera at 54th and El Cajon.
building
is one of the
rooftops
lead cars on the
were often
motorcade.
guarded between the FDR
Behind it,
and
the officers
JFK
on their
days.
motorcycles.
That's another reason why it looks like a sitting duck in a
was
car, and he
killed,
wasn't.
The Secret Service
This is
agents
repeated.
normally walk directly beside the car on either side. We do not see any in this photograph, but usually 2 or 3 Secret Service agents will walk on either side of the car so that they are there to spot anyone who looks like a troublemaker.
Now keep in mind, in the nation's grief, all those details are going out one ear out the other. Like my mom and dad told me, you're still doing great, said that, Vinny, 9 people could have killed Kennedy. We were so consumed with grief. Those details you're throwing at me that day, went in one ear and out the other, about agents not being by the car, we didn't think those thoughts. We didn't care we lost our president. So it's only years later, looking in hindsight, you hear, what's Ron Gardner talking about there? And there you go. This is, you saw a still photo of it, but this is, again, all through the South American trip, the bubble tops on the back car, no rain, agents on the back of the car. Armed forces were on both sides.
Look at that. Unbelievable.
So my narration, I guess you can tell these are YouTube videos of mine put together. But
and you can see the excellent motorcycle formation. Press was in front of the car and by the car. Press photographers. And here we go. Look at that.
Even if people out there think that there was one shooter from the rear, imagine if they would have been on the back of the car and these security measures. Kennedy lives. It's just another assassination attempt like Reagan and Ford and Truman.
Notice the excellent security for President Kennedy. Agents on the back of the car, bubble top, great motorcycle formation, military and police lining street facing the crowd.
Is basically Puerto Rico, Bogota, Colombia, Caracas, yeah, Costa Rica later on. Okay, that's basically it for those clips. And then, yeah, we got this all there. And then, oh, this is interesting. I'm always on their mind. That's a Willie Nelson song. I'm always on Clint Hill and Gerald Blaine's mind. We'll see this in a second here. Get this going. Here we go.
This is a man named Vince Palomara. Do you know him?
I'm familiar with him. I don't know him.
He says that, I guess, we'll talk about this, that he sent you a 22-page letter.
I recall receiving a letter which...
And this man's name is Vince Palomara. He is a citizen who has taken it on his own to become an expert. He's from Pennsylvania, and I don't know him. I've never talked to him. I've just seen it on the web. And he is, I believe he's a graduate of Duquesne University. So let's watch this, and I'll get your reaction to it.
There never would have been a book if I didn't send a 22-page letter, okay, to Clint Hill that pissed him off so much that his very good friend Jerry Blaine came out with this book as a counter. It's very obvious it's a thinly veiled attempt to rewrite history and to blame President Kennedy without trying to blame him for his own assassination.
The fellow we talked about in the last interview, Vince Palomara, have you seen his letter? No, he's been critical of...
Well, I'll accept his
Are you worried that he's being...
Well, maybe he has some secret agenda. I don't know.
This is a man...
Like I said, little old amateur me out in the wilderness, but here's Gerald Blaine and Clint Hill with their buddy Brian Lamb, the CEO, and they got to bring up little old amateur me. I don't know. It's, if you watch the videos and the whole, it's out of context. I talk about Jackie in Pakistan and blah, 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 and John Jr. and this gentleman, Vince Palomara. And then it comes up again. Second time, my wife and I, Amanda, were watching 2012. They won't mention me again. Come on. And there's these beautiful stories about Mrs. Kennedy and me, which actually is a really nice book other than a few pages about the assassination out of nowhere. This gentleman, Vince Palomara, do you remember him from the last time we spoke? This is before my first book was out. And I didn't even have a book published yet. I was just the amateur out in the woods, you know? And I was like, and thou protestest too much? Why were they doing that? And here's the thing, this is the big discovery. If I'd say one of my big discoveries is building rooftops were normally guarded, FDR, Truman, Ike, and JFK eras. This is when, you had to search newspaper archives for it. This is Pittsburgh, 1944. 10,000 policemen were stationed along the motorcade's route. Rooftops were ordered to spectators. Okay, and you can read the rest there, the old Roosevelt smile. You might say, oh, okay, I always like to throw a little devil's advocate. Hey, I was doing World War II. Okay, yeah, whatever. Well, here's Truman. World War II's over. And they're still scattered throughout the crowds. Police guard every street. And then, more importantly, building rooftops again. Here he is. You have to pay money through newspaper.com, I think it's called. You get these, but there you go. 1959, Eisenhower. You know, look at this. Even the manhole covers were battened down, and the suspicious strangers were not barred from buildings and rooftops. You might say, okay, that's good. What about JFK? Here you go. This is from a book from 1962, long out of print, called What Does a Secret Service Agent Do? Like I said, long out of print. 1962, the year before Kennedy's assassinated. And this will be blown up in a second, but the thing is, this book would not have been written without the cooperation of Chief Rowley, who's pictured, and Chief Inspector Michael Torina, who I also corresponded with. Chief Inspector Michael Torina wrote the Secret Service manual. So if anybody in the world would know about proper procedures, he would. And again, this is an over-the-counter book, albeit it's been out of print since like the early 70s. And who cared about these things other than me back then, but that's another story. If the president is to appear in a parade, agents and policemen are assigned posts atop buildings and on the street along the parade route. Just digest that for a moment. Wow, that says it all. And then officers, other tremendous information. Exceptionally large crowds are expected. The Secret Service may call upon the armed forces to station troops along the line of march. Agents of the White House detail ride in the same car. Others will walk or trot alongside, while still others ride in the automobile in front of them behind the presidential car. This was standard stuff. And again, what should be in the back of your mind is, look, it's a Bruder film. There's like no one by the car. It looks like a sitting duck. Gee, I wonder why. This is 4 days before Dallas. This only came out in the late 1990s, thanks to the ARB, thanks to Oliver Stone's JFK and the JFK Act. This only came out in like 1999. This is the Tampa Final Survey Report. The sheriff's office secured the roofs of major buildings in the downtown and suburban areas. Now, obviously, we know officially those buildings weren't guarding Dallas or Dealey Plaza or Main Street or nothing. There's spectators all hanging out of the windows, nobody guarding rooftops, but this was the longest domestic motorcade President Kennedy ever had, 28 miles. And I also spoke to Russell Groover, who was the lead motorcycle officer in Tampa. He said, oh yeah, there was on every multi-story building, there was armed guards with shotguns and Thompson submachine guns ordered to shoot if anything got out of control. And he started out, he goes, oh, we want to make sure that our boys weren't in there on harm's way, but they had a diamond formation, which was much better in Dallas. And I said, well, okay, multi-story. Well, what about single dwellings? Since we had the military and the police lined the route to cover them, because they were more at eye level, like as ranch level, but anything 2 stories and up, they were guarded by, and again, it's not going to be in photographs a lot of time. I have a few, but usually people are looking at Kennedy. They're not looking up there and, hey, look at that armed forces guy. That's like Arnold Rawlin. Some other people testified about, well, they thought it was Secret Service guards. So some people knew that that was standard procedure back then, but it's an amazing document, only 20 years ago. This is from Pittsburgh, PA, in the interest of time. Basically, it says here when he came to Pittsburgh, all the buildings, culverts, bridges were guarded. They had armed detectives ordered to shoot if anybody even opened a window and whatnot. And it's again before the assassination, not after, not as a result of the assassination. Oh, you're looking back with rose-colored glasses, Vince. It's only because of the assassination they did these things. They did this since the FDR days. There's a reason presidents survived before Dallas. Guard of 35,000 line streets to assure the president's safety, and helicopter manned the route during the entire motorcade. This is amazing, this one. President will have plenty of protection while abroad. The actual article isn't real meaty. It's good, but you might say, well, that headline's amazing, but what's it say? Nothing really amazing until this part. They asked local authorities to put police on top of buildings and along the streets. Bridges get special attention. Again, they asked local authorities to put police on tops of buildings, July '63. Interesting subnote about that article, when it was published by the Associated Press, many times that paragraph was omitted. It was only when I, again, paid money through newspapers.com, to my shock, I came across it and I thought, I already have this one. What? By buildings? Like, what's this about? And the rest is history. So a lot of times that wasn't even advertised. Maybe it slipped out and the Secret Service didn't like that. JFK went to Nashville. The Nashville banner, Bill Adams good researcher friend of mine from like 20 years ago. He got me the original Nashville Banner newspaper, kind of disintegrated through the years. It was yellow and falling apart, but it had this in here. And thank God in 2013, JFK Nashville was published by the Nashville Banner, and thank God they had this reproduced. There it is. The men took their posts at 8 a.m. and remained at their rooftop stations until the president and his party passed. Even if there's some out there that think, well, I kind of think one person did do it, Vince, sorry. All right, have your one person. I don't believe that, but let's say it. Building rooftops are manned, history's changed. There you go. Obviously, I believe there's conspiracy, but I would like to throw that out for the Doubting Thomases. Again, interest of time. Spot on rooftops. Now, this is the inaugural, to be fair, complete survey of all buildings, water main, sewers, underground conduits. Thousands of troops guarded his routes. Here he is in Seattle. Got the two arrows about rooftops, building rooftops guarded. Here it is. An unannounced route, some manning rooftops. Thanks. Here is in Paris, rooftops again. And his picture's a little, those little arrows up there are actually the Paris police, the gendarmerie, I guess they're called. They were all on all the rooftops there. This came out December '63 and really angered the Secret Service. Former Chief Baumann, rule violation cited in JFK assassination, clearing of buildings on Parade Route called fundamental. And he said this was true in Washington, D.C. motorcades, and also all out-of-town motorcade routes. Chief Baumann saying that. But again, this is before Woodward and Bernstein, before the details. People cared about things back then, before tabloid press. You know, people, it was a more innocent time. People believed things they read about, and something like that would have went in one ear and not the other. Yet in Dallas, does it even be said, rooftops weren't guarded. Is basically an article after the fact, a couple of days later, saying, the decision to post policemen or other agents on rooftops and in buildings always one that must be weighed against the manpower requirements. So he acknowledges that it was something that would happen, but trying to make excuses for him. Meantime, 28-mile motorcade in Tampa, multi-story, they're all armed guards everywhere. Police motorcycles normally rode in great numbers all around the limousine. I'm going to speed this up, I only have a little more. And it says 65 cycles, 65 motorcycles. Do I even have to say how many were around the limousine in Dallas? Look at this Zapruder film. Here we are in England. Here we are in France. Here we are in Rome. There's another thing in Rome here. This is Tampa going very fast. That's why it's blurry. That's Agent Chuck Zapruder in the back of the car. Here we are in Germany. Here we are in Milwaukee, and I love this. Police Captain Dahl said, we have to police the tops of buildings too, and all bridges and viaducts along the route. There it is, matter-of-factly, there it is. There's the down formation, but note that thing about the buildings again. Buffalo, New York, row of motorcycles, Buffalo, New York. Here we are in New York, New York, all surrounded. Good police by limo. Here we are in New York again. Here we are, these are different trips in New York. This is Tampa. Look at that beautiful, in Russell Groover, the gentleman I mentioned before in the lead. Here's San Antonio, Texas, the day before. Look at the rows. The House Select Committee made a great deal about this, uniquely insecure in Dallas. Indeed, look at the rows of motorcycles. And we already knew the police helicopter was manning a ride overhead filming. There's San Antonio again. Look at Houston. Look at that. Unbelievable. Yet in Dallas, the day before, November 21st, there were supposed to be 2 more motorcycles on each side. They weren't there. They were called away by the Secret Service, which Belford Lawson, the House Select Committee, noted was a unique occurrence, and in the final draft, he said it was a uniquely insecure. There's Mr. Lawson, who felt that 8 motorcycles were too many, so he moved them aside. There's Marion Baker of the Dallas Police Department said, yeah, they didn't want us by the car, testified to the Warren Commission. So did B.J. Martin. They instructed us that they didn't want anyone riding past the president's car, and we were to ride to the rear of his car. I think that's all, officer. Kind of reminds you of Zapruder. Oh, that's enough, Mr. Zapruder, about shots coming from behind. Armed detective, again, I'll speed this up, but usually was a police detective's car in the motorcade. Again, this is just depicting that. In Chicago, they did get wind of a threat in Chicago. Again, there was prior threats before Dallas. Don Lawton rode on the back of the car. They had 6 motorcycles surrounding the limousine, and they had a detective's car filled with armed men. Here they are in Pittsburgh, armed men in a detective's car. Here they are in Costa Rica, a jeep with military men and military men surrounding the agents surrounding the limousine. In Dallas, Chief Curry wanted the detective's car there. It was canceled. Will Fritz wanted his men there. They were canceled the day before. Here's Seth Canner. Will Fritz's men called off night before by Secret Service, had planned to ride a closed car with machine guns and car behind President. And police and military lined the streets and buildings. And here we go, just basically saying that. This is just proving it. And again, this is in Pueblo, Colorado, not foreign trips, domestic trips. There's all the arrows of the National Guardsmen on top of the roof as well, guarding president. That's how presidents lived in open cars before. Speed, good intelligence, military men lined the street, police lined the street facing the crowd, many undercover detectives in the crowds, agents on or near the rear of the car, partial bubble sometimes. It's not just luck rubbing a rabbit's foot. There's a reason why presidents live. And you can't think of today with terrorism and looking at even these pictures, oh, he's a sitting duck. You got to think of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. You got to think of a time when it was a single, rifle shot. It was a pistol before terrorism. So you got to put yourself in the context of the time. And again, there's a reason why presidents lived back then. Police on rooftops, police on rooftops. See if there's anything else. Like the Marines, you saw the videos, the Marines. This is 4 days before Dallas. There's the military police lining the streets. The ranch-style one-story building. That's how they protected them. Don't do everybody pulling a rifle out of a window there. Less obvious will be the thousands of plainclothesmen and West German police in the crowds. This is 1957, New York, Eisenhower. Partial bubble top, policemen on motorcycles and horseback, all surrounding the limousine. 1957, they could afford Eisenhower that president, protection. Don't fret, JFK will be safe abroad. And again, these are contemporary articles before the assassination. Yet in Dallas, Secret Service all secure. And famously, Kellerman said the advanced security precautions are the most stringent and thorough ever in the Secret Service history. And I think I only got a couple more minutes. So just one thing real quick. Agent Thomas Shipman, driver of Kennedy's limousine, he died of an alleged heart attack at Camp David October 14th, 1963. Spoke to his family, said he had a clean bill of health. He was a Secret Service agent assigned to drive the car. He believed he was going to be the driver in Dallas. He died because he had family in Dallas. And obviously, he ended up being Greer, and Greer was very incompetent. There's Shipman driving JFK and Jackie. There's Shipman driving Kennedy in D.C. He died again a month before. I only found this out like 20 years ago. And a little old me out in the wilderness found out these gentlemen passed away. And the interesting thing, good, I'm almost done here. Chuck Zaboral, agent on the rear of the car, he served in the Marines of Oswald. What a coincidence. If that's a coincidence, it's a coincidence. But he served Camp Pendleton at the very same time of Oswald. So that's pretty crazy. My three suspects are Floyd Boring, who was the planner of the Texas trip. He was the man who gave out all the advance assignments and did all the advance work, and basically was the one who conveyed about JFK not wanting the agents on the car. Yet he tells me adamantly there's no truth to that. And again, I'll just fly through these. Emory Roberts was my second suspect. He was the agent who called back the men at Love Field and was in charge of the agents of the follow-up car, who did nothing. You saw that video before. Here he is, Emory Roberts. The next day, we saw the Umbrella Man in the Zapruder film. The next day, here's Emory Roberts holding up an umbrella for LBJ. Hello, you're supposed to be an agent. Worry about your pistol. Don't worry about an umbrella for LBJ. Jerry Kivett, looked like it's disgust to me. Emory Roberts went on to be LBJ's receptionist. So a current Secret Service, still current agent, went on to be LBJ's receptionist. Strange, to put it mildly. And yeah, it's basically Bill Greer is my final one. Bill Greer. This will be the final clip. It's only 40 seconds. Let Dave Powers speak for me.
The president's friend, Dave Powers, now director of the Kennedy Library in Boston, remembers talking to a grief-stricken Bill Greer, the Secret Service agent who drove Kennedy's car. What if they'd sped out of Dealey Plaza after the first shots, but before the fatal one?
I found it always, and so did he, about Bill, all those agents were very close to us, and that they felt so bad.
If the driver of the president's car and stepped on the gas after the first two shots.
Yes. What that president would be alive today, and he'd be 71 years old, and he'd be the director here.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Vince. I haven't heard the name Bill Adams for years. I dealt with him, too. I got just a couple of quick things to go through here because I think they're important. First of all, I'm acknowledged briefly in the Survivor's Guilt book. That book, everyone should buy that book. It is a fantastic book, absolutely fantastic. I recruited him for the Men Who Killed Kennedy series, and I'm very proud of that. And he should have had more time in that series. I had no anything, but I agree with that. You mentioned Jim Bishop, and I've dealt with Jim Bishop people, okay? Jim Bishop was a Del Charo regular. He was there. He was an unbelievable supporter of Clint Murchison. In all of I have his newspaper articles in the 50s and the 60s, always supporting the 27.5% oil depletion allowance, always supporting oil, always supporting the mob, always supporting Hoover and the FBI, always supporting Rowley. Rowley contributed to that book in big time, and he praises Rowley constantly. Rowley's the first man to shake LBJ's hand when he gets off Air Force One. When Manchester kept hammering LBJ to let me interview you for my book, he kept putting him off and putting him off and putting him off. He finally said, okay, come on over, I'll interview. He went over, and instead of LBJ, there was a guy sitting there. You ask me questions, and I'll answer the way LBJ would. And there was a squawk box. I'm almost done. There was a squawk box. It's obviously Johnson on the squawk box. And every time the guy who was answering said something that Johnson didn't like, the little red light would go on, and the guy had to run in the back and get the right answer and come back and amend it. That man was Jack Valenti, okay? Jack Valenti, all right? It's Valenti who is the man who invited Kennedy to the Albert Thomas dinner the night before. That's how they got him there. Not all that other stuff, just like you point out, all the other lies and myths, okay? Then when Bishop says, I'm gonna write a book on the assassination, he goes to LBJ, no problem. LBJ and Lady Bird cooperate with Bishop completely. And finally, I met Dave Powers. I talked about him yesterday. He absolutely believed in a Graciano right shooter, and I showed him a gunman on the other knoll, and his eyes nearly came out of his head. I think that covers everything. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, give me another round of applause for Vince Palomara.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks.
And have him assist me here. We have a little something special here for Vince. On behalf of the JFK Assassination Conference, we are awarding him with the Justice for John F. Kennedy Award from the JFK Assassination Conference for 2019. I want to say a little bit about Vince. Before he came in the room, I asked him about how he got involved with this, and he said that Penn Jones Jr. had advised him to pick a topic and research the hell out of it. I think he took Penn Jones' admonishment quite well. When I think about Secret Service, there's nothing else that comes to my mind other than Vince Palomara. He is the source authority, is he not? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I read on the internet, and you know how reliable that can be, that you started this in 1988. Yeah. Were you in the 3rd grade or what?
I began my interest in the assassination in 1978. I was 12, so I was 22. I was 22. Wow. My mom and dad still doing great. Huge Kennedy fan. My mom still cries on certain occasions about President Kennedy. It really affected them deeply. So it affected me. I was born in 1966 after the effect, you know, and always has struck a chord with me, and then the rest is history. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm also interested in his life, too, but something about his assassination, and it would just make a long story very short. In fact, very short, like 30 seconds. what it boils down to is I got 4 days, that book, I know, I should know this, the Associated Press, UPI. Anyway, and there's a picture in there of Clint Hill by a limousine. I was interested in the show called The Wild Wild West, a fictional show about the 19th century Secret Service, Robert Conrad. So I was already interested in Secret Service in a weird sort of way. I said, who is that, Mom? I said, well, that's Agent Clint Hill. Some reason it just resonated for me. From that moment on, I just started looking at the Secret Service. It was all secondary sources at first, but then I got into primary sources, and it was in the early 90s. In fact, I don't know if Dr. Weck's still here. He called me in 1991, and he doesn't even know. I don't think he was actually a linchpin for me. He says, you know what you should do? Because I even admitted at the time in 1991, I didn't actually speak to any agents. He says, you should do that. You should maybe think about primary research, in his wonderful voice. And I started to do that. So actually, Dr. Weck, wherever you are, it's your main impetus as well. So my parents and Dr. Weck. Yeah.
All right. One more time, ladies and gentlemen, Vince Palomara.
I spoke to the special agent in charge of the White House detail, the #1 agent, Gerald Bain. I asked him, President Kennedy, I understand he was difficult to protect, right? He didn't want the agents on the back of the car, and he told me, this is the exact quote, I don't remember Kennedy ever saying anything about not having agents on the back of the car. If you look at the newsreels, you'll see agents on there. Well, one by one, I spoke to many of his colleagues, not only in the Secret Service, but actually White House aides that were not Secret Service agents, and it was a landslide. They were all telling me the same thing.
Supposedly Kennedy ordered the agents off the back of the limousine. No, he had nothing to do with that. The record of history, that is false.
President Kennedy, very nice man, not difficult to protect, did not order the agents off the back of the car.
This complete departure from procedure is captured here as the motorcade begins to leave Love Field Airport in Dallas.
Jogging beside the car was an agent. In the fob car behind him, another agent rises from his seat and does hand gestures like this, obviously to order him to cease and desist. The agent stops in his tracks 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times, goes like this. And actually, that's the universal body language for what is going on. Turns out the agent name was Don Lawton, and he's the agent who's formerly told to cease and desist by shift leader Emory Roberts, who rises in his seat with the hand gestures, and you see Don Lawton going like this. Don Lawton rode on the back of the car on the Chicago trip earlier in 1963 and 4 days before in Tampa. But he's relegated to meaningless Love Field luggage duty during the motorcade, during the assassination. It's ridiculous.
Secret Service agent Clint Hill is also recalled from his position on the opposite side of the limousine. Emory Roberts had been the only one of 3 Secret Service shift leaders from the White House that was part of the motorcade.
Emory Roberts was in charge of the follow-up car that was immediately behind JFK, full of Secret Service agents. He was the general, so to speak, of the follow-up car. If he said something, that's how it went.
Emory Roberts, however, received his orders from Floyd Boring, the #2 man of the Secret Service White House detail, based in Washington.
Floyd Boring, he was in charge of planning the Texas trip, and he was the one who gave out assignments.
In an interview with the Assassination Records Review Board in 1996, he stated that there had been no change in policy for the Dallas trip. Even more alarming is what happened inside the Secret Service car directly behind the president's limousine once shots rang out. Shift leader Emory Roberts would give an order to the other agents in the car.
When the assassination begins, he orders the men not to move. Sam Kinney, the driver of the fob car, who's right beside him, confirmed to me that this happened. He ordered the men not to move at the beginning of the assassination.
Emory Roberts supposedly ordered the men not to move. That's exactly right.
These men were sworn to protect the president, to dive in front of a bullet if need be, to sacrifice their body. And you mean to tell me this man is going to order them to cease and desist when the shooting begins?
And just what were the Secret Service agents who were actually inside the president's limousine doing at the time of the shooting?
Agents Bill Greer and Roy Kellerman were pivotal to the success of the assassination, and they were pivotal to the success of the assassination through inaction. Bill Greer was the driver of the president's limousine in Dallas. Roy Kellerman was riding right beside him. Greer hits the gas pedal, Kennedy lives. First shot rings out. Bill Greer looks back at the president. His foot's on the brake too because the car slows down. It's only going 11.2 miles an hour. It's crawling at this point. And then Roy Kellerman says, "Get out of line, we've been hit." That's when Bill Greer turns around a second time and is staring at Kennedy and doesn't do anything until Kennedy is killed. Yes, it was only 6 to 8 seconds, depending on estimates, but that is a lifetime for a Secret Service agent. Count down 6 to 8 seconds and watch the video of Reagan being shot. These men, by the time the 8-second shot, they're well out of there. Let alone 2, 3, 5 seconds. Amazing what they did. And Roy Kellerman, for his part, doesn't jump. He doesn't jump back. He's turned around. He's staring at Kennedy too.
The shooting had stopped by the time Clint Hill, who was assigned to protect the First Lady, finally leapt onto the limousine. Could these monumental lapses by the Secret Service just have been a series of unfortunate oversights?
How convenient that this all happened on the day allegedly a lone assassin struck the president down. 1963 protocol, President Kennedy should have lived in Dallas. He should have lived past the Dallas motorcade. But Floyd Boring, in charge of protection of the president by planning the Texas trip, Emory Roberts in charge of the follow-up car, and Bill Greer, the driver of the president's car. Those three men bear the largest burden of what went down in Dallas. The buck stops with the Secret Service. Yeah.
Here was killed. The Secret Service agents normally walk directly beside the car on either side. We do not see any in this photograph, but usually 2 or 3 Secret Service agents will walk on either side of the car so that they are there to spot anyone who looks like a troublemaker.